Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Health Made Easy. And I'm your host, Dr. Jason Jones. And I'm probably going to get a lot of negative feedback on this particular podcast. And that's okay. It doesn't really bother me because if you're listening to this podcast, you are interested in being a healthier person. You are interested in keeping it simple, breaking it down into some practical steps. But I'm going to talk about today why cutting carbohydrates out is a bad idea. And there's so many people out there that are on the keto train. They're on, the high protein train. That is like just basically just low carb, low carb, low carb, cut carbs out. Carbs are bad. They're evil. Don't eat this, don't eat that, all those kinds of things. And there is some merit to that. However, the majority of that, I think it can be quite dogmatic because we're not taking into consideration, proper food combining and, in the value that carbohydrates bring, not only to your health, normal body functions, energy pathways, brain health, and such a variety of other factors in there because a lot of people tend to cut foods out that contain carbs just to reduce their weight, but there are many people who don't consider the short and long-term consequences of those actions, because if you're one of the people who are cutting carbs out just to lose weight, what we're going to cover today are the side effects of the actions that you're actually taking. So, what are carbohydrates and what do they do? So carbohydrates are sugar molecules that can be broken down to release glucose or sugar, needed by the body to make energy. Now, this macromolecule includes things like starches, fiber, sugars, that can be found in a variety of different foods such as, fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy products, and legumes. Your body uses carbohydrates as oftentimes as its major source of energy. Although the body can also use fat and protein to make fuel, but this process is quite long and also less efficient. But it's also the reason that when you go the low carb or no carb, you are forcing your body to only use those particular pathways to make energy, and we just were never designed to only use one pathway for energy. We've got multiple pathways, so why not use them? Now, do we overdo certain ones of those? Of course we do, but you got to learn how to handle it correctly. So according to the Institute of Medicine, every individual should get 45 to 65% of their daily caloric intake from carbohydrate food sources. Okay. Now, is everybody going to fit in between 45 and 65 perfectly? Of course not. But the average minimum suggested amount of carbohydrates daily is 130 grams. Now, a dude that's 350 pounds and he's a power lifter, he's going to eat a lot more than those. The person who is a typical, what we call hard gainer, which is they're sort of skinny, and they always will be, almost like no matter what they do, and they just so happen to be, a competitive runner, they might eat as many as 600 or 800 grams a day of carbohydrates, and still have all their blood work, all their lab values, and all those things be completely fine. However, your carb and calorie intake depends heavily on your lifestyle. Your height, your weight, your health needs, your activity level, all those kinds of things are all, important. But if you have a sedentary lifestyle, you certainly can have a lower percentage of carbohydrates compared to an individual who engages in regular, vigorous activities. Now, what happens when you cut out carbs completely? What are the side effects? Well, cutting carbohydrates out completely from your diet can lead to development of many different effects and symptoms, that can be deadly, or at least very detrimental to your health. And some symptoms may be temporary and clear up as your body adjusts to this sort of new way of living, but certain effects can be permanent and may cause great damage to your health and your well-being. So, number one, Severe headaches. Some people when they don't eat enough carbohydrates or get enough sugar in their diet, their blood glucose levels drop drastically, and this can cause them to actually have headaches, and they may experience this ache daily. And the severity can increase until you actually bring your carbs back up. Constipation and dehydration. When you cut carbs out completely, it may lead to some constipation and dehydration because when you eat carbohydrates, your body actually takes it, and when it stores it in the muscle tissue, it actually stores it with water. So most low carb diets, they skip foods that contain fiber, which can promote constipation. You may even experience things like intestinal blockage, stomach cramps, in extreme cases. Things like fatigue, sadness, and depression. Your body needs an adequate amount of carbs to work optimally. When you take out this energy-giving food, then you're likely to suffer some real fatigue, which might run into depression, might run into sadness, as well. Also, carbs play a major role in the production of hormones. So when you cut out carbs in your diet, it can cause some hormonal imbalance that leads to emotional instability. Bad breath is another one. When your body is deprived of carbohydrates, it switches to using fats, which is not a wrong thing, as a source of energy through a process called ketosis. This process causes an accumulation of what are called ketone bodies that tend to give out a fruity or nail polish remover type of smell. Okay, and you can have some bad breath. Now, typically, that only lasts if you're in ketosis or you're doing a keto diet or you're doing a low carb diet or a high protein thing. Essentially just cutting carbs out, that may only last for a couple of weeks to as long as a month. Now, other side effects of cutting carbs out: brain fog, heart palpitations, leg cramps, bloating, elevated cholesterol levels. When you're thinking about a long-term way of losing weight or maintaining, keeping some pounds off, you shouldn't necessarily just jump to cutting carbs out completely. You may be doing yourself more harm than good, but if you do choose to do that, you have to understand if you're going to do a keto diet or you're going to do a low carb diet, that there are many things that you're going to need to do to compensate around not having those carbohydrates. So, hope this helped you out. This is Dr. Jason Jones. If you have not gone on to Apple Podcasts or any podcast player that you listen to and given us a rating and review, we would love it. We read all those. Also, too, if you have any questions or anything you'd like us to cover on this podcast, we'd love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.